Hey guys, today in Quick Animes I'm going to talk about episodes 9, 10, and 11 of the anime Ayakashi Japanese classic horror. Stay tuned, there will be spoilers ahead. The episode starts with a medicine seller standing in front of the entrance of a family's land, a man who is passing the alert, saying that he couldn't sell any medicine because this was the big day of the young lady. The seller ignores him and continues to enter the land. When the seller finishes climbing the stairs, he stops for a moment and gives a smile, after which he continues to walk towards the house. Inside the land, after arriving at the entrance of the house, a girl named Kayo welcomes him. She asks if he is there to deliver something. He denies it, saying he was just a medicine salesman. Upon hearing this, Kayo says that they are not free now. The salesman ignores her and enters the house. After he asks Kayo if today would have a wedding ceremony. Kayo says yes. She says that today was the day that Mao-sama will marry Shiono-sama, and says that soon they will come to pick you up for the wedding. The seller says that as a gift he will offer a medicine to the bride. After he says that he whispers something in Kayo's ear, Kayo hears what he said, is very excited, and asks him to let her see it soon. Before the seller managed to say something, a gentleman appears at the entrance of the house. He sees the salesman and tells him to leave. Kayo intervenes the gentleman and says that the salesman came in just to drink some water, and also says that if he is late, Katsuyama-sama will be angry. After hearing this, you will leave. Kayo, after realizing that the gentleman had already left, asks the seller to show what he had said to her. The seller then starts to show his things that he carried in a kind of bag. After some time talking, a mouse appears and Kayo is startled. The seller then notices that they have a lot of mouse traps in their house and asks Kayo why they don't have a cat. Kayo then replies that there is someone in the house who doesn't like cats very much. Right after Kayo finishes talking, a woman appears behind her screaming her name. She says that that gentleman, we now find out, is called Yahei, told her that she was wasting time there, and then sends Kayo to fill the water pot because he was empty. Kayo then goes and leaves the seller alone with the woman. The seller apologized, and the scene cuts to where the bride is. A family employee arrives at the room where they are, and then warns that the ones in charge of looking for the bride have arrived. After talking with her family a little more, she leaves towards the ones in charge of picking her up, and her family is right behind her. When she reaches the supervisors, her face makes an expression of despair, and then she falls to the ground lifeless. Her family members are desperate and start screaming for help. The salesperson then arrives at the scene. He says that it was not the work of a killer, and that the person responsible for this was not something that could be cut with a sword. Everyone starts to suspect the seller. The seller then puts a paper on each wall on his side. He says that if they don't make the barrier soon, the things can get complicated. After some time, the family calms down. They arrest the seller, leaving him tied up in one of the rooms of the house, and begin to interrogate him. They take the seller's backpack and start rummaging through it, and he explains what each of the things are. They ask until they find a sword. They try to draw the sword, but they can't, so they question him about that. He replies that that sword was used to hunt demons and cut them, and that it couldn't be opened until to meet Katachi Makoto and the demons Kotowari. They then tell him to stop talking nonsense. They then begin to argue about what they will do about Mao's death, whether to hide it or talk about it. In the end, the discussion comes to no result, after which a woman asks Kayo to light the candles in Mao's room. A Otojima family employee offers to go with her, and the two go together. Kayo is a little scared, but Otojima comforts her. After that, everyone starts to hear a cat sound and gets scared, but the noise soon stops. After that, Yahei, who had come out of the house to look for something, falls from the ceiling with his lifeless body and with some injuries that were caused before the fall. Soon after, the seller breaks free and starts spreading stamps all over the house. After he finishes and says that that thing couldn't get in, the house starts shaking and everyone is scared. They then ask what that was, and the seller replies that it was a demon, and says that to stop him they need to discover the demons Katachi, Makoto, and Kotowari, and says that he had already discovered the Katachi, and that if they don't discover the other two soon, everyone will be killed. The vendor says that the Katachi the demon takes comes from hatred and rancor against humans, and asks everyone regarding the Makoto and Kotowari to talk about them. Everyone ignores him and tells Kayo to get them some drink. The seller then says that he needs salt, and on the way he will also get the drink. As they did not trust him, they asked a servant of the family to accompany him, and so it is done. After they returned, the seller then started to make a line of salt around the room. A servant of the family tries to break the line, but the seller stops him, saying that he can even mock. But it was not to break the line, so he ends the line, and no one questions him anymore. Then he spreads a kind of demon trap around the room. After finishing, he again tells them to tell him about the Makoto and Kotowari. They then question and ask why they should say it. He then says that the Makoto is the reason why this incident happened, and the Kotowari is the truth in his heart. So they ask what it was, and he says each one is a different question. What happened? Why did this happen? What started this hatred? He says that until the answers to these questions are revealed, their sword will have no power, and they won't be able to kill that demon. They then begin to suspect that the demon was a cat, and remember that they had one in the old days, but apparently sold it to merchants used their skin. They suddenly hear a sound. They think it might be someone who has been visiting them, but the seller explains that this is impossible, as outside the barrier he had made, it was all devil's territory, and that it was impossible for anyone to cross over and go there. The scene then cuts to the sight of someone, or something, walking around the house. This thing finds the traps the seller had placed and starts walking through them. The traps make a noise wherever the thing passes. Back where the others are, we can see that the papers the seller had placed on the wall are now starting to change, and a symbol is formed on each of the papers. The scene then switches between the seller following the screeching traps and the view of the thing until the two stop, and we are shown Mao's mother crying around his lifeless body. His mother removes the cloth that used to cover his face, and we are shown that the line of salt that the seller had done had come undone. The body, until then dead, opens its eyes. He then speaks the name of the woman who used to cry and now makes a face of terror. The woman starts screaming desperately, saying that was Tamaki, and starts to go crazy with despair, running around the house screaming. The seller, after noticing that room was going to be destroyed, sends everyone into the other room. The terrified one didn't even hear him and continues screaming desperately. The door of the room that the woman is screaming then opens, and we are shown numerous cats, and a woman in white appears among them. Yoshiaki, a family member, takes his sword and runs towards the woman, screaming for the demon to die. The woman then makes a gesture with her hand, and the entire room is taken over by the demon. The seller, realizing that he closes the door of the room he and the others were in and starts putting seals on the wall. Then a fight begins between the seller and the demon so that the room they are in is not destroyed like the last one. Kaio, realizing that the seller was in trouble, takes the salt that was left and throws all of it on the demon. This scares the demon. The seller, noticing that the demon was gone for now, takes everyone with him to the last room while closing the doors and putting a seal on all of them. Everyone then realizes that 2 more family members have died, but they manage to keep a little calm. The seller then asks who that was, and he says that it was part of the demon. It's Makoto and Kotowari, and questions the remaining family members. They then told him to draw the sword soon, but he says it's still not possible. All rooms behind the one they are behind are destroyed, and theirs would be too. But a family member opens a secret room and asks everyone to come in. A woman in the family then starts laughing, saying it was useless. The seller then questions her, asking if she knew what was going on. She then says it's all the men's fault, saying that it was they who led the demon there. After she says that, the demon enters the room they were in before. Then one of the walls turns red, and a kind of cat appears in it and starts circling the wall, after which the seller seems to understand something and says that the head of the family is the devil's Makoto. The salesman says that whoever turned it into a devil was head of the family, says he has an obligation to speak. The boss then says that was a very old grudge. He then starts to say, formerly a girl called Tamaki was a sacrificial offering. He took her to his house. He says he intended to return her immediately, but slowly it became inevitable. She slowly started to go to him, bowing before him, and he hugged her, so nothing could be done. Then we are shown the scene of him giving her a cat. He says that he gave her beautiful clothes and fed her the best he had. Then we are shown Tamaki lying in the floor, and he says, I destroyed that young woman going, which was a regrettable ending. After he tells this story, they begin to assume that Tamaki would not let anyone from that house get married, and that his grudge was beyond redemption, but this was not enough, and the sword was not open. There was still someone to speak. The seller then tries hold the demon so he doesn't get in. The whole family starts going crazy, and everyone is desperate. The demon is very strong, and the seller can't hold him, but Otojima starts asking for help uncontrollably, so the seller discovers the demon's Kotowari a day. So he will be able to open the sword. He quickly makes a barrier around himself and the others and starts the process of opening the sword, but the sword does not open, so one of the information was false, so the seller had to undo his barrier to protect everyone. The seller is then pushed inside the red wall that had already taken over the room. He has some visions of the cat before turning into a demon, but the scene cuts to the family that is inside. From the last place in the house that the demon hadn't invaded, the demon enters the room in the form of a giant monstrous cat and kills everyone but Kaio and Otojima, and the scene cuts to Tamaki's true past. The boss had lied about the Makoto, and now the real one was being shown. Tamaki was asking to return to where the head of the family had picked her up. The boss denies the request and starts to physically attack her while calling her ungrateful. Then we are shown her on the floor without her clothes, insinuating that the boss had been there, sexually abused. After this, we are shown that she is trapped in a place that she cannot get out of, and this place was the secret room that was revealed before. Tamaki is not eating, and the woman who brought her food says that maybe she will stop to bring food as it was a waste of her time. After the woman leaves, Tamaki realizes that there was a cat, and she calls him to where she was to give her food. Then several days pass and she always gives her food to the cat, and she was getting thinner every day. Another family member appears and sexually abuses Tamaki. After that, the head of the family arrives and starts to physically attack her. The cat then defends her by scratching the head. She then asks him to run, and after that Tamaki ends up passing away. Finally, we are shown another family member with her body in his hands, saying he would take care of it, and then throws the body on the floor. The scene cuts back to the vendor. He is now in the secret room and manages to unsheath the sword. Now that the demon's true Makoto was known, the vendor's form changes drastically, now giving life to long white hair, yellow symbols all over the place.
Body, a better physique, and a yellow outfit. The seller and the devil then start to fight a battle. The battle was fierce, but in the end, the seller emerges victorious. After the demon is defeated, a lifeless cat appears on the ground. Kakayo and Odajima then bury the cat near the house so he can live forever with Tamaki, after which they talk a little with the seller. Kakayo says he thinks he will go back to his village, and Odajima doesn't know what he's going to do. Now that the whole family in that house is Mabel dead, they can't stay there anymore. The seller can see Tamaki and the cat leaving together from that house that made them suffer so much, implying that they were finally free. And at last he too leaves. If a salesman knocked on your door, saying that a demon was chasing you, what would you do? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel by activating the bell to receive notification of the next videos here at Summarizing Animes. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.